Hi guys. Alright, happy Thursday. So, still kinda iffy about the ghost box. Don't know if I'm going to purchase one or not. Probably not. Unless I can find one for 20 bucks or less. I don't know, honestly. Actually, let's see how much a ghost box would be. Probably try eBay. That'd probably be the best bet. I always go through Amazon for everything. I love Amazon. It's like right now, the next day. Prime shipping is amazing. Everything is amazing about Amazon for me. So let's see. Ghost. Oh, toys. Ghost toys. Alright, ghost box. Ghost box, spirit box. Alright, so we will compare prices here. Oh, wow. No, thank you. Yeah. I'm not paying $60 for a K2 EMF meter deluxe. That's ridiculous. That is a lot of money. So 60 bucks. Alright. Oh. Ghost hunting spirit box, 155. Spirit box, that looks just like my grandma's old radio, 136. So I could just actually sell my grandma's old radio for like 136 bucks. Oh, okay, here we have a Ghost PSB7 Spirit box speaker, enhanced EVP audio, black and silver with lights, and it's one offer from $18. This is the cheapest I would go. This is what I would buy. So it's used to enhance the audio of the SPB7 spirit box. So you have to buy another spirit box along with it. And I'm not really into that. No, I'm not paying that much for that. So yeah, I don't know. 90 bucks, 70 bucks. No way, that's ridiculous. So spirit boxes are way too much. Nope. Not buying them. Oh, the Obulus. There's the Obulus. How much is this? Wow. Oh, it's unavailable. So yeah, the Obulus is unavailable. eBay would probably be a better bet. All the Obuluses are... No. They're not available. Alright, so I don't even know if I have an eBay app on here. I might. Honestly, I don't fucking know. What's this? Oh, what do I do? Can I add another page? Oh, there we go. Oh, eBay. Alright, let's see how much a ghost box would be on here. Alright, ghost box. There's no way I'm paying that much for a ghost box. I'll make my own. Wow. Holy crap, they're very expensive, even on eBay. Oh, a book. Ooh, but we do have a Gucci Paint ghost box with a clutch bag by Gucci. $1,487. I'd buy that. See, everything is so expensive. 70, 100, 65, 70. What is this? A SB7 Spirit EVP box? I don't think so. Wouldn't this stuff work right on here? You would think it would work right on here for your EVPs and stuff. Yeah, I'm not. Rare Sanjean Hacked Ghost Spirit Box. No thanks. No, thank you. I don't care if they're rare. This is, yeah, no. I'll stick with my Ouija. And maybe, I don't know, just a regular app. So, okay, so here are the supposed most haunted places in all of Indiana. So, I'm loving that you guys are loving the ghost stuff. I'm really getting into it. I think it's really pretty cool. So, it's very interesting to me as well. Alright, so Indiana's home to corn, basketball, and race cars. Race cars is good. NASCAR. So, alright, and a truly alarming number of haunted houses, cursed wild places, and moldering cemeteries full of unquiet dead. Of course, pretty much every state from Texas to Pennsylvania to Michigan hosts its share of ghost stories. But there's something deeply disturbing about finding so much of the macabre in a place that's supposedly the epitome of normal. I'm very glad Indiana's not that normal. Alright, so here are 11 spots that reveal the darkest corners of the Hoosier heartland. Okay, French Lick Springs Hotel. Alright, anybody need French tips? That was a bad joke. Alright, let's see. Alright. Looks nice. Very top picture. Maybe. So, let's see what this is all about. Alright, it's in Orange County. So, if you're going to confront the cosmic unknown, you might as well do it at a world-class resort equipped with 2 spas, 3 golf courses for dining, and a casino. Okay, I'm in. Yeah, I'm in. I'll go. Let's go gamble. I'm in. No, not really. So this historic establishment, part of the much larger French Lick Resort Casino complex, was built in 1901 and hosted bigwigs such as Al Capone. Wow, he's been popping up lately. I wonder if there is... No, there's probably no connection. Bob Hope. Aww. I loved Bob Hope. Do you guys even know who Bob Hope is? Franklin D. Roosevelt and Duke Ellington. So, according to legend, its former owner, Thomas Taggart, remains there to this day, reeking of tobacco smoke. That'd be me. I mean, that would be me. Me, dead, haunting something if I could. Yeah, I would probably bring about a very big cloud of cigarette smoke. Just like my grandma. Love her. Alright, so, and loitering near the service elevator. He's also turned up in the main ballroom, riding a horse. Okay. And apparently he's not alone. Housekeepers occasionally find blood in a bathtub used by a jilted bridge to commit suicide. Ooh, and the 6th floor seems particularly prone to cold spots, prowling shadows, footsteps, and spectral laughter. I love how they word these things. It's amazing. It just gives me chills, and I love it. I love to be intrigued. Not scared, intrigued. So also the front desk reportedly gets phone calls from rooms they know are empty. I would love to do that. I would love to just literally, like, not go on tour, but just kind of like a, you know, like a, I don't know, like a tour almost, but just like kind of like a, to teach people, you know, the right way to Ouija, the right way, you know, in my opinion, and to ghost hunt. You know, don't be dicks, don't be, you know, rude, don't be all that good stuff. So, who knows? That would be really cool. So, that is number 1. Oh, this is Thrillist Indianapolis, by the way. Alright, so now we have the Indiana Central State Hospital. Wow. And it looks, yeah, totally run down. It looks totally horrid. Alright, so this is in Indianapolis. Okay, when it comes in ghosts, this macabre, whatever, facility deals in volume. Constructed in 1848 and originally called the Central Indiana Hospital for the Insane. It housed tens of thousands of patients in its vast buildings and 160-acre ground before being closed in 1994. Wow. Unfortunately, some of its inhabitants refuse to move on. There are reports of screams and moans in the surviving buildings, assaults by invisible hands and wraiths, and like a wraiths and glowing orbs floating around the property. What makes it even weirder is that a large portion of the former asylum has been redeveloped into apartments. Wow. I would love to live there. Who wouldn't? Alright. Where'd I go? Okay, so word has it that a spiritualist has been called several times to cleanse them. Okay, so if you guys need a medium to come in and truly do some work, get a hold of me. Okay, so now we have the Haunted Bridge. Okay, that's pretty cool, of Avon. I love that. Just it kind of reminds me of being in Colorado when I was in Boulder. The little shacks along the sides of the road. Tarot readings, psychic readings, mediumship readings, palm readings. All these kinds of amazing things. Rune readings. You can just get anything there. So, okay, the Haunted Bridge. So, the other innocuous Indianapolis bedroom community of Avon plays host to one of the nation's creepiest looking haunted bridges. So the decrepit-looking concrete railroad span looks as old as the pyramids, and sports an undeniably sinister air, especially if you drive beneath it at night. If you care to park and poke around, locals say you might encounter the ghost of a weeping woman whose child was killed on the railroad tracks, or a drunken worker who fell into a load of wet construction concrete and was entombed in the bridge itself. Very interesting. When, let's see, Gary, Indiana, when they were doing the molten, I don't know, it was something, I don't know. If you fall in, you just instantly burn up. One of my relatives, I guess, fell in. So, yeah. Alright, so the Story Inn in Nashville, Indiana. Alright, so during daytime you can follow a meandering southern Indiana road to this almost 2-picture square for words former general store that's been converted into a restaurant and a hostelry. There's wonderful food, relaxing countryside, and plenty of fall foliage. But the ambience changes when the sun drops and you realize it's black as pitch outside. Okay, so that was worded odd. There's no one for miles, and you are not quite sure how to get home. Oh, and of course there's the ghost. She's called the Blue Lady, and she's been sighted in the general store and in an upstairs sleeping room. If you'd like some me time with the Spectre, you can rent her favorite spot, appropriately called the Blue Lady Room, for slightly less than $200 per night. I would never pay that much to stay in one room. Or you can enjoy the unique thrill of bunking in one of the handful of cabins scattered across the dark wooded property. That would be better. The cabins sound so much better. So far no one's reported hearing any clanking chains or moaning in those. Perhaps because at night the ghosts are drowned out by the ceaseless howls of coyotes. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't know. So, alright, so Whispering Estate, Mitchell, Indiana. So, the owners of this 3,700 square foot Victorian home walk a fine line when describing the place to potential visitors. Casual tourists are told that the house offers a friendly atmosphere and a place to relax and unwind, while hardcore ghost hunters are enticed with the assertion that it's one of the few places that you can go that the walls actually do talk. Actually, they apparently do lots more than that. Over the decades, residents and visitors have reported horrific nightmares earthquake-like tremors, and waking up to the sensation of an invisible entity sitting on their chest, which is sleep paralysis. Science has proven that to be, yes, sleep paralysis. Public tours are available, but you have to sign a waiver. Seriously. That's what it said. Seriously. Wow. So you have to sign a waiver. I might do that. If you have to sign a waiver because your life is in danger for a ghost hunt, I would do that. It just seems better. Slippery Noodle Inn. A slippery noodle. That doesn't sound good. Indianapolis. Alright. In operation under various names since 1850. This is the oldest drinking establishment in Indiana. So, naturally, there are ghost stories. Legend has it that the place is haunted by the spirits of dead prostitutes from the days back in the mid-20th century, when there was an old-school bordello upstairs. So it closed abruptly in 1953, after one of its patrons, murdered another and left the weapon, a bloody knife, on the bar. Today, the ghosts commemorate the more colorful days by harassing guests, especially men, who dare to venture upstairs. I wonder if they have a stance on gay men. I would hope that they would give gay men a break. Alright, so downstairs the doors open and close by themselves. Staffers report seeing apparitions, and patrons are occasionally shouldered aside by unseen forces. That's awesome. That's really amazing. So, alright. The next is the Hannah House, which we did go over, but this gives you just a different kind of perspective from another person's, obviously, perspective. So, alright, so this 160-year-old mansion would fit right into the Conjuring universe. What? The Conjuring universe? Is that an actual... Oh, that's the movie. I was thinking like a Conjuring University. That would be amazing. Alright, built in 1858 by Alexander Moore Hanna. It allegedly served as a stop on the Underground Railroad. Again, allegedly, several fugitive slaves died in a basement fire and were secretly buried there, which might explain the weird sounds, moving furniture, cold drafts, and the persistent smell of death. Yuck. In spite of this, the house can be rented for weddings and other functions. That's where I want my wedding. I want my wedding there. I don't care what it is. If I'm marrying, I don't know, a donkey. That's where I'm going to get married. And there's probably... Oh, and there's a monthly open house for the curious. Ooh. A monthly open house for the curious. Lisa Kimple. We need to go here. That would be amazing. Why am I blurry? I'm not liking this. There. That's a little better. So, wow. They actually offer a monthly open house. I would hope the open house would be free. It should be, right? Open house free, right? So, in spring, there's even an Easter egg hunt for kids. One fun activity, if you define the term fun rather loosely, is to take lots of interior and exterior photos. Then search them for ghostly faces leering back at you. Wow. That's pretty neat. I would definitely do that. Go to an open house and see what's up. Alright, so Washington Hall. The University of Notre Dame. Which is insanely haunted. Or it's supposedly very haunted. So yeah. I'm still thinking about that ghost spirit box. I can't do that. I'm trying to think of how I could create one of my own. I'm not that great with that kind of stuff. But maybe I could. Possibly, I don't know. So, alright, Washington Hall. Okay, if you'd like to rub shoulders with a celebrity ghost, visit Washington Hall on the Notre Dame campus at South Bend. You might encounter the spirit of George One for the Kipper, Gipp, the legendary Notre Dame football star who died in 1920, not long after his ultimately untimely departure. Students started reporting disembodied footsteps, strange music. Ooh, I love that kind of music. It's the best. It literally is. And doors opening and closing on their own. The former boys' dormitory now houses classrooms, but the Gipper is still reportedly out and about. Okay, we have the Willard Library, which obviously has 24 webcams now. So you can actually go to the Willard Library and watch them. Live feeds from the library's battery of 24-hour webcams. 24-hour webcams. I don't know how many webcams they actually have. Alright, so Highland Lawn Cemetery. This is in Terre Haute. So, alright. Opened in 1884. This is a 139-acre graveyard. That's really not too big. So it's chock full of weeping angels, above ground family tombs, elaborate gravestones, immaculate landscaping, and everything else that one expects of an old school cemetery. It's also home to the state's most unusual apparition, the ghost of a bulldog. Oh, I love bulldogs. The ghost of a bulldog named Stiffy Green. Back in the early 20th century, Stiffy, so named because of his stiff-legged gait, was the constant companion of an old man named John Heinel. When Heinel passed away in 1920, Stiffy was inconsolable and stayed day and night at the door to Heinel's above-ground tomb. When the dog finally wasted away and died, he was placed inside the tomb with his master. That's sad. Shortly thereafter, and to this day, visitors report hearing Stiffy's distinctive bark coming from the direction of his master's grave. That's enough to bring tears to your eyes, especially for an animal. Damn it. Love animals. Alright, so the grave in the middle of the road. That's interesting. That's really interesting. This is in Franklin, Indiana. So, even though its name sounds like the title of a creepypasta, rest assured that this is the real deal. The grave sits right in the middle of East 400 South at 2-lane blacktop ribbon that bulges outward in order to bracket the final resting place of Nancy Barnett, 1793 to 1831. Her relatives, allegedly at gunpoint, persuaded the folks building the road to leave Barnett's grave alone and build around it. So not only do passerby run the risk of encountering a ghost on East 400 South, there's also the very real danger of not noticing Barnett's concrete reinforced sepulchre in a time to avoid hitting it. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of dangerous. So, it gets creepier. When the grave was exhumed a couple of years ago during a road winding project, archaeologists discovered it contained not one set of remains, but at least seven sets of human bodies. So 2 women, 4 children, and a man. All were... what the hell is that word? All were reinterred, meaning that it is an eerie spot, could now properly be called the cemetery in the middle of the road. Wow. So that's pretty interesting. Very interesting. So, the spot, grave in the middle of the road. I think that's pretty fascinating. Who wouldn't want to do that, really? I mean, honestly, that is seriously very cool. So, alright. So, we have prairie ghosts. Oh, wow. So, ooh, we have La Lorena, The creepy Mexican legend moves north to the urban area of Indiana immigrant neighborhoods. That one sounds pretty interesting. Alright, so there's the movie. You guys all know, La Llorona. This is in Gary, Indiana. So, this strange and frightening phantom has been making appearances in the old Gary neighborhood of Cudahy for many years. She is usually seen near 5th and Klein Avenue. Years ago, Cudahy was made up of mostly Mexican immigrants who came from the north to find work in the steel mills. Many people believe that the legend of La Llorona came with them. I like that. So the original story tells of a widow who lived with her sons in a small town near Mexico City. So it seems that she fell in love with a young nobleman who refused to marry her because of her children. The woman went mad, and one night she savagely murdered her children. Oh God. She ran to her lover to tell him what she had done, but he was repulsed and frightened by her and threw her out of his house. Wouldn't you call the police? So, now completely insane, she roamed the streets, her children's blood on her hands and dress, weeping and screaming. Before she could be apprehended by the authorities, her body was discovered face down in a pool of muddy water. So, for hundreds of years, the story of the bloody woman in white has been told in Mexico City, and she was called La Llorona. Sorry, it means the weeping, crying or weeping woman, I'm not sure which. La Llorona. So, and then the Llorona. The A would be feminine, so it could be the weeping woman. So, alright, or crying, I'm not sure. So, some believe this spirit came north with the immigrants, but others believe the Mexican population simply gave the name of their legend to a ghost that already existed in Cudahy. So, they claim that the ghost is actually that of a woman whose children were killed in an auto accident in the early 1930s. After their funeral, she returned to the spot many times and wandered the area crying for her children. Okay, so I'm guessing that it does mean La Llorona means crying or weeping, so she died completely insane many years ago, but her spirit still continued to wander. So, despite the frequent sightings of La Llorona, she has remained an elusive ghost. Many researchers and investigators have tried in vain to track her down, but she remains one step ahead of them, still roaming the night, crying over the loss of the children whose blood stains her hands. Okay, so La Llorona has been reported in the Cudahy section of Gary, Indiana, the northwest corner of the state. She is most often seen near the corner of 5th and Klein Avenue. Alright, by Troy Taylor, all rights reserved. Thank you for this bit of information. La Llorona. I'm gonna have to watch that movie tonight now. Yeah, definitely watch that movie tonight. La Llorona. I love it. Alright. Ooh. Okay, so we've went over a lot of these, but we still have quite a few. The Indianapolis Poltergeist. Holy crap, this is huge. Okay, Troy Taylor, thank you again for some pretty amazing information. So there's the Indianapolis Poltergeist. So, wow. Just, if I could just fucking go to these places, that would be so cool, because I'm almost sure nothing would happen. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. That's why you don't get your hopes up. Don't expect anything to happen. Well, I don't know. Like when you get your tongue pierced. Like, hype yourself up. Like, you have like For 2 weeks before I got my tongue pierced, I convinced myself that it was going to be the worst possible pain I've ever felt in my entire life. So I go in, they clamp it, and I was like, is it done? It's done. Okay, so do you hype yourself up for a lesser climax? Or do you stay on the low so you can experience something really cool? I don't know. This is completely different from Ouija, so this is not my grounds for ghost hunting at all. I just love the legends and the lore. So, alright, this is a long one, guys. So, the Indianapolis Poltergeist. So, throughout the history of ghost research, traditional hauntings and poltergeist, which is a noisy ghost, have commonly been blamed for any violent or destructive activity in a haunting. In the past, researchers believed that all such activity at a haunted location was the work of spirits or an outside force, but this is not always the case. During a poltergeist outbreak, there can be a variety of phenomena taking place. There are reports of knocking and tapping noises, sounds, and no visible cause. Disturbance of stationary objects like household items and furniture. Doors slamming, lights turning on and off. Fire breaking out, and much, much more. So, while in some cases this activity can be connected to ghosts, in other cases it probably isn't. It certainly remains paranormal, though, and because of this, it is also unexplained and very controversial. So, most poltergeist activity is from the person, people. That's very true. Alright, so one of the current theories behind a poltergeist haunting or activity like phenomena is that the activity is caused by a person in the household known as the human agent. There you go. That's my firm belief about poltergeist. That's what I think. So the agent is usually an adolescent girl, and normally one that is troubled emotionally. Nope. So, alright. It is believed that she unconsciously manipulates physical objects in the house by psychokinesis. PK. The power to move things by the energy generated in the brain. The presence of the energy is almost always an unconscious one, and it is rare when any of the agents actually realize that they are the source of the destruction around them. They do not realize until they are the reason that the objects in the home have become displaced, and are usually of the impression that a ghost or some other form of supernatural entity is presented instead. So the bursts of PK come and go, and most poltergeist-like cases will peak early and then slowly fade away. Alright, so we have a picture here. A 1962 newspaper photo of the house of North Delaware Street, where the strange happenings took place. Creepy house. Very creepy house. I like this. So yeah, that's my interpretation of poltergeist activity too. It's the person, whoever is the most troubled in the house, causes the poltergeist activity. Oddly enough, I've never experienced poltergeist activity. Alright. And while all of this makes for convenient explanation, as does the idea that the house is haunted by traditional ghosts, what of cases that exist for which no easy explanations apply? How do we attempt to solve the cases during which such bizarre events occur that are so baffling that they remain unsolved for decades later? You will be pondering these questions in the pages ahead as you hear about bottles smashing, glass flying, phantom bites, and even the victims of the poltergeist outbreak being arrested for causing the disturbance. Indianapolis was a strange place to be in March of 1962. What is next month? What is this month? Oh, this is January. Shit. Never mind. So, the outbreak began on Sunday night, March 11th. at a few minutes past 10 p.m. Ooh, that's my time right there, 10 p.m. That's my time. I love that time. I don't know why. So according to Mrs. Renette Beck, a divorced woman who resided in a house at 2910 North Delaware Street in Indianapolis, she shared the large two-story house with her widowed mother, Miss Linda Gemenecki, 61, and her daughter Linda, 13. Their later accounts stated that they had experienced nothing odd in the house that day until that evening, when a heavy glass beer mug somehow moved on its own. It had happened in the kitchen, and the mug lifted out of the sink and fell behind a flower pot. Both Mrs. Beck and her mother were in the room at the time, but neither of them had been close to the glass. So, then about 10:37, that's my time again. That's odd. That's really odd. This strange incident was followed by the sound of a loud crash from upstairs. That's incredible. I think that's really seriously incredible. So, alright, because of a number of robberies in the neighborhood, Mrs. Beck first assumed that a burglar may have broken into the house. So, however, when she and her mother and her daughter went to investigate, they found a large piece of German crystal lying on the floor about 4 feet from the bookcase where it had been sitting. The crystal was broken into pieces. Quote, "I don't see how it could have gotten off of the bookcase in the first place," unquote, Mrs. Beck said, nor how it landed 4 feet away. Wow. Alright, so although disturbed by the incident, they thought little about it until a few minutes after 11, when a heavy glass ashtray was hurled across a downstairs room. Half an hour later, another piece of crystal was inexplicably shattered, and too unnerved to stay in the house, they left and checked into a hotel for the rest of the night. Little did they know, however, the strange events had just begun. Wow. So that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting. So, alright, before continuing with the chronicle of events, it would be worthwhile to take a closer look at the family involved. So, as already mentioned, researchers often point to the relationship within the family when trying to determine the cause of poltergeist outbreaks. And the Beck family was far from a peaceful and contented group. So, I'm surprised that my house doesn't have stuff flying everywhere. I really am. Alright, Renee Beck, 32, was the divorced wife of a former U.S. Embassy officer who she had married in her native Vienna. She was well educated and spoke English fluently, although with an accent. Her daughter, Linda, was described by investigators as being shy and uncommunicative, with the biggest detriment to tranquility in the household seemed to be the presence of Mrs. Linda, the mother of Mrs. Beck. Mrs. Gemecki was the wealthy widow of a German newspaper publisher who had moved to Indianapolis in 1959. So, following the death of her husband, friends and neighbors later told investigators that the family did not get along very well, and that noisy and unpleasant fights could often be heard coming from the house. So, I think that's kind of the answer. I kind of think that's the answer. I mean, that's just how it happens. I mean, unfocused energy, anger, just kind of floating around, which is why we sage, because it does work, makes that shit happen. Still, it could be very real, so I'm not dismissing any of this because it's too interesting. Okay, where did I go? Okay, so as the events of March 1962 began to unfold, there were others who became involved in them. Most prominent were Mr. and Mrs. Emil Noceda, friends of the Beck family. Noceda was a respected Indianapolis businessman who operated the city's Sheriff Inn for many years. After the strange activity at the house began, Mrs. Beck telephoned Mr. Noceda and the police, in that order. Alright, so the police obviously aren't first. Alright, so the police became involved in the case on the second day. Not surprisingly, the police reports and subsequently what appeared in newspapers at that time differed greatly from the eyewitness accounts of the events and the accounts that were given to the investigators who looked into the outbreak. In fact, the official version of the story even offered a solution to the problem that some amateur ghost busting by one of the police officers. So, we have two options here. So, okay, after fleeing to the safety of the hotel room for the night, the three women returned home at about 1:30 the following afternoon. Okay, it's 1:30 right now. I like this. So, they found nothing had been disturbed while they were away, but within 30 minutes after their arrival, they again heard the sounds of shattering glass. The women ran from room to room to find bowls, vases, and glassware lying broken and cracked. And when Mrs. Gamecki stood up from a chair where she had been sitting in the kitchen, a coffee cup that had been lying in the sink on the other side of the room suddenly flew and smashed against the wall, just above the chair when she had been seated just moments before. Wow. Alright, so, bewildered and very frightened, the family did just what so many other families in similar circumstances have done. They called the police. Wow. I couldn't imagine calling the police over a ghost. I really honestly couldn't. I don't know what I'd say. So, Sergeant John Mullen was the first officer on the scene. When he arrived, he found three very nervous and agitated women and a house that was littered with broken glass, plates, and assorted objects. He ventured that the damage had been done by the sounds from a hi-fi stereo or by a pellet gun. This was rather silly, considering that the house contained only one small record player, unplugged at the time, and intact storm windows, which would have made firing a gun of any sort through them impossible. Even with the police present, though, the activity did not cease. So, Patrolman Ray Patton was in the house and heard the sound of something falling in Linda's bedroom. He investigated and found the glass figure of a swan broken into a number of pieces lying on the floor in the middle of the room. No one had been in the room at the time that this had occurred. So, other officers soon arrived, and they brought with them high-frequency sound gear to detect any movement that might be causing the objects to fall, fly through the air, and break. So, during the time the gear was being tested, the house was surrounded by hundreds of neighbors and curiosity seekers. The word was out that something strange was happening on Delaware Street, and everyone wanted to catch a glimpse of it. Finally, more officers had to be dispatched to keep the street open for traffic. So, the listening equipment was later removed when nothing out of the ordinary was detected with it. During this time it was in use, no activity occurred. So, wow. This is crazy. So not long after, though, Mrs. Beck realized that something had vanished. She searched. What is going on? Okay, so she searched fruitlessly for her purse, which contained $125, the operating fund for a small restaurant that she had recently opened near her home, but it was nowhere to be found. Police officers and reporters scoured the house for some trace of the bag, but it had simply vanished. Why was it by supernatural hands, though? So on March 25th, 2 weeks after glass began to fly at the house, the purse reappeared. Mrs. Beck told police that her mother found it when she felt the bag nudging against her leg. Only 35 of the original amount remained in the purse when it was found. Very interesting. So, before that occurred, however, police officers were baffled by a new angle in the strange case. It seemed that bizarre punctures, or what appeared to be bites, began to appear on the hands and arms of 2 of the 3 women. In each case, the marks consisted of tiny puncture wounds, like those made by a bat. According to the police record, but how could a bat have been flying around in a house in Indiana in the middle of winter? So, wow, it's the middle of winter right now. This part of the case remains unexplained even by the debunkers. So, wow, interesting. So after another puzzling incident took place on Monday night, March 12th, around 8:30 that evening, it was a short time after the mentioned officer Ray Patton arrived as an observer. He accompanied the women on a tour of the house, which was still littered with broken glass and crockery. Mrs. Beck showed him a smashed mirror, which was lying on the floor. She told him that it had been shattered by a heavy glass ashtray that had flown across the room from a night table next to the bed. She also showed him a set of 3 matched glasses, of which there had been 6 matching pieces the day before. 3 of them had been mysteriously broken over the weekend. For safekeeping, Mrs. Beck had placed the 3 remaining glasses under her hat on the dresser in the bedroom. This is where they were when Patton last saw them. That's very interesting. Very interesting. So the room was empty when Patton left it, but as the officer left the room and walked into the hall, one of the glasses that had been hidden under the hat struck him in the back and broke into several pieces. The glass flew with such force that it left him bruised and sore for a few days afterward. A moment after he was struck, he heard the sound of more breaking glass. So Patton crossed back into the room and found another glass lying broken on the floor. He raised the hat, and there were the hat where the 3 glasses had been placed, and found that only one of them remained intact. The room had been completely empty at this time, and there has been no one else nearby but the officer, a witness that even a skeptic would have to find as a reliable source. So as it happens with many such cases, the phenomena at the house peaked and then subsided by March 22nd. The place on North Delaware was left in a disastrous state, with broken mirrors, glass, and pottery scattered about. Feathers had been torn from pillows, pictures had been ripped from their frames, walls, woodwork were dented from where objects had been violently thrown against them. The 3 women were left with no answers or causes for any of the events they began cleaning up. But the Beck family was not out of the news. On March 25th, Mrs. Beck's purse was mysteriously returned, but the police would not be called back to the house until the following day, March 26th. A call from one of the neighbors summoned officers back to the North Delaware Street. Where they arrived, they found Mrs. Gimecki lying on the floor, apparently semi-conscious. One of the officers was on a stairway landing when he saw the women throw a heavy smoking tray against the wall, and saw her overturn a piano bench. So based on the events that had so recently plagued the house, he arrested the woman on charges of being disorderly. She was immediately under suspicion for causing the other recent incidences, despite the eyewitness accounts of other officers on the scene. Okay, we have, kind of something. So, alright, Mrs. Beck protested the arrest. She stated that her mother was a diabetic and in shock and needed medical care. So the older woman was taken to the hospital, where she was examined, and then on to the city jail for the night. In court the next day, the judge proposed holding her for a mental examination, but agreed to dismiss the case if Mrs. Gimecki returned to Germany within 10 days. She agreed and was released into the custody of her daughter. So, the newspapers once again had a field day with the case. They immediately charged that the poltergeist activity at the house had not been the work of the fantastic, but rather the physical actions of Mrs. Gimecki, and they were aided in reaching their conclusions by research done by Lieutenant Francis J. Dux of the Indianapolis Police Department. He reported to the papers that he tried to get the spirits to come out and play, but they wouldn't. It seems Lieutenant, that looks like Lieutenant Douche, Dux, sat everyone in the Beck household down for an hour and a half to observe what might happen. When nothing occurred, he reached the immediate conclusion that the activity only happened when one member of the family was out of sight and away from the others. So, thanks to this 90 minutes of research, he dismissed the paranormal aspects of the case entirely. Wow. That was getting really interesting right there, too. So, this charge was quickly answered by Emily Noceda. So, the respected businessman and family friend who had been on the scene virtually day and night for all 16 days of the outbreak. The newspapers had tired of the occurrences after 6 days, when no explanation was in sight, and only offered more coverage when it appeared that Mrs. Gimecki was the culprit. The police had been in keeping with this attitude that if you can't explain it, ignore it. This could not be said of Mr. Noceda, who had searched for answers to the outbreak since the beginning. For this reason, his account of the events differed greatly from those in the newspapers and the official police reports. So, he had been off on the scene since the second day and explained that the phenomena had developed selectively. First, only glassware was affected. Then, the activity seemed to target plates and china. When most of this had been broken, poultry and glass jars began breaking. Finally, furniture began moving about, sometimes violently. One night, a wall lamp was pulled off the wall, and Noceda reached it with a large nail. Reattached it with a large nail. So a few minutes later, it came down again, that time breaking. But no one was near it at the time. So, on another evening, Noceda, his wife, and the Beck family were all in the living room together, and they heard a racket in the kitchen. So, they went to see what was going on and found 3 steak knives lying on the floor in the shape of a cross. That's a little scary. That's like Amityville Horror right there. Yeah, it is. So they were put back in the drawer, and the group returned to the living room. The sounds were repeated a few minutes later, and they found that the knives on the floor again in the shape of the cross. Quote, "I have never seen anything like it," unquote, Noceda said. Never. He also reported the so-called bat bites that affected the 3 women. He saw them literally appear several times on the family, as did many of the others who were present. Wow. So one day, Mrs. Gimecki was sitting on the couch, and all of them were discussing the case, and the older woman suddenly grabbed her throat and cried out that she was being choked. Noceda and a nearby policeman both grabbed her hands and pulled them down. So on her throat were 2 tiny sets of punctures that looked like small teeth marks. They formed a triangle on either side of her throat. The policeman examined Mrs. Gimecki's hands to see if she could have infected the wound herself. but she was not wearing a ring, and there was nothing in her hands. Wow. So, altogether, Nocita reported, quote, Mrs. Gamecki was bitten 9 times and Mrs. Beck was bitten twice. The flesh around the bites, or punctures, turned black and blue. But the women said that the injuries caused no pain and they had no after effects. So, Nocita also added that the phenomena had stopped before Mrs. Gamecki had been arrested, and he stated for certain that from what certain that from what he had seen and heard in the house, there was no way that Mrs. Gamecki or any of the others could have done all of the things that had taken place. So he was sure that something else was involved, a force that had deliberately broken objects in other places of the house, while all of them were seated together in another room. Along with the police reports that would seem to agree with this, there are also first-hand reports from the man who is likely the country's eminent researcher into poltergeist phenomena, Dr. William Roll. He was present in the Beck house, literally living there between March 16th and March 22nd. He witnessed firsthand the appearance of many phantom bites, and was impressed with Mrs. Beck's no-nonsense accounting on the events, which he noted was much less dramatic than the newspapers. He was also present for many of the unexplained disturbances and chronicled 110 movements and incidents in all. That's interesting. So, okay, he was able to rule out Mrs. Gamecki as a suspect in the case. So, although more scientifically than Mrs. Nocita was able to do in order to observe everyone involved, he enlisted the aid of Dr. David Blumenthal, a clinical psychologist in Indianapolis. So he had first brought the case to Dr. Roll's attention and was glad to help out when needed. The two men divided their time observing members of the family, and this became crucial when they began to suspect that a strange knocking sound might have been the work of Mrs. Gamecki. The sound had come from the direction of her bedroom and could have been duplicated by the movement of a large picture above her bed. So late one evening, Dr. Roll was in the kitchen with Mrs. Beck, Linda was in bed, and Dr. Blumenthal was in the bedroom, holding onto the hands of Mrs. Gamecki. A series of knocks began again, and no one present could have caused them. Wow. So, Dr. Roll detailed the case in his 1972 book called The Poltergeist, but this well-known researcher could not find an explanation for what had taken place in the Indianapolis home. So, despite ruling out every natural cause and possible hoax he could think of, the case remained unsolved. It still remains so today and leaves a mark on the map of Indiana as a place where the unexplained made an appearance, if only for a little while. And you guys can find this, prairieghosts.com. Haunted Indiana, the Indianapolis Poltergeist. Wow. Very interesting. Yeah, it's probably more or less something of that nature. Something of that nature. Just something strange. Yeah, so when there's, very tense energy in a house, stuff happens. I mean, it really does. So, yeah. Alright, guys. So, more ghost stories. I'm loving these. I don't know why. So, if you guys have ghost stories, send them to me. My email is below. Or just use ryanjespich@gmail.com. And I will do your ghost story. So, really interesting. So, Alright guys, I love you all. I will see you guys tomorrow. Definitely. Everybody stay warm. We have more snow coming. Thank you, Mr. Lee Paul. You prayed for snow. We're getting like 3 to 6 more inches. And it's freezing again, like negative. Oh, we warmed up. We're like at negative 17 now. Air temperature. So, alright guys. Stay warm, and I love you all. With all my heart. All the way from Venus. Oh, all the way back down. And I will see you guys tomorrow. So, everybody stay warm. And bring your damn animals inside. Thanks. Alright guys, I love you all. And thanks for watching.